It was October 2012. And that was the day that I started to wake up from the widow's fog that I had been in after the loss of my husband. And it was the day that I knew I was going to be able to smile again, that I was going to be able to laugh again, to go on with my life again. However, in that moment, I had no idea how to do that. I had no idea. So that started me on the journey to get my own personal happiness back and how to figure out how to do that. And so I embarked on a journey to find out the first step. I realized I had to find out who I was, to get past all of the labels that I had had on myself. That I was a daughter. I mean, and they were good labels. I was a daughter, and then I was a wife, and then I was a mother. Then I was divorced from my first husband, so I was a failure. But then I got remarried, and I was a wife again, and then I was a grandmother, but then I was a widow. And in all of that, who was I? Who was Barbara outside of all of those labels? And how many of you, think that you've got a label on you? We all equate ourselves with the labels around us of who we are and what we are. And so that kind of started my journey. So the very first thing I did was okay, I heard about the law of attraction. I happened to be in Montreal, watched The Secret. I have no idea how I found it. It just kind of popped up. At the time, it was just, oh, okay, it was a movie. I'm going to watch it. And it was personal development. And yet I know that was the universe shining on me and bringing me what I was going to need over the next years to get my own personal happiness back. So the very first coaching program that I enrolled in was called The Ultimate Game of Life. From that, a whole bunch of journeys later, I became fascinated with how people learn. And one of the things, just how we learn everything. And how we learn and what we learn is all part of the law of attraction. Because when we embrace how we learn things, it will also get rid of the resistance. Like we talked about last week, the resistance is when we think we're supposed to be something that we might not necessarily be, and how to get past that. So that became my fascination. So today, what we're going to do, I'm going to chunk it down into a couple of different things. We are going to talk about how we learn, the types of learners that there are. We're going to talk about the stages of learning. And then we're going to learn the history of the personality science and how it fits into how we learn and the relationships that we have with the people around us. Okay? So it's going to be in three separate sections. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So what type of a learner are you? Okay? How are you going to learn? How do you learn things? And the biggest question is, are you different? Like I'm going to tell you the four different types, but are you different from everyone else in your family? I'll tell you up front, I was the odd of the family. And that I used to always think, what's wrong with me that I can't learn the way the rest of the family do? Why can't I do that? And whatever that happened to be. And because then we get caught up in the guilt of that. What's wrong with me that I can't, that still beating ourselves up all the time of what we're not, rather than learning about what we are. So that's where this kind of came in. So visual learner, the first type of learner is visual learners. They learn from seeing things. They, rather than seeing it in the written form, they see things visually with their eyes. And so if you think that you're a visual learner, some of the things that you're going to find out, you're going to say yes or no. So, do you see information? Do you have to see information in order to remember it? Do you pay close attention to people's body language? Do you like art and beauty and how things look? Are those things important to you? Do you visualize information in your mind? And then that helps you to remember it. So, if you answer yes to most of those questions, chances are that you are a visual learner. So, who thinks right now that they're a visual learner? Unmute and give us an example, okay? Sherry was the first one I saw.
I think I'm a visual learner because when I read instructions on how to do something, at the end of it, I have no clue what to do. But if I can find a YouTube video or some person in person to show me how to do it hands-on, then I get it.
Exactly. Anyone else?
Hey, I'm exactly the same way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Even in school right now too. I mean, I need face-to-face. It's hard for me to do it online. I like to get my answers right away, when I ask a question.
Right.
Yeah, so anything visual, that's the best way. And I also feel stupid by that because majority of people that I know can just read and get it.
Exactly. And that's why I was debating whether to just only do the personality science part of this. And then I thought, no, because part of the law of attraction is accepting who we are. And because Laura, you just nailed it on the head. You felt stupid because you weren't learning the way somebody else was. And yes. How often has that happened in our lives?
A whole lot.
And that's one of the things that, a little tip that I'm going to give you, and this is going to apply to all 4 of the learning styles. In the morning, stand in front of the mirror, look at yourself in the eyeballs, and say, and Laura, I'm going to use you as the example because this is how you work. This is what you said. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, Laura, I forgive you for feeling that you were stupid because you're a visual learner. You have to get past that. You have to forgive yourself for being that way because you are a visual learner. Embrace it. You love the fact that you're a visual learner because that's your law of attraction. That's what is going to be attracted to you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's my tip for that. Okay, the second type of learner is oral, auditory. They learn by hearing. And so that's why they love lectures and they love hearing speeches, and because that's how they learn, and that they become good at remembering what they're told because they hear it. And that's why sometimes with kids, I can remember saying to my kids, how many times have I told you? But they didn't hear it. They weren't auditory learners. But when I sat them down and said, okay, this is what you need to do, I realize now, because I now know personality science, both of my kids were what we call blueprints, which you're going to hear about, but they needed to see the written word. It didn't matter how many times I was telling them. They weren't hearing it because that was not how they learned. So how many of you think that you're an auditory learner? Who wants to share?
Barbara, can you be 2?
Absolutely. You're a little bit of all of them depending on the situation, but most of the time you'll have one that's a little bit more dominant.
I see.
So Barbara, I think I'm a combination of visual and auditory. Like, I love to listen to lectures on YouTube, but as I'm listening, and even audiobooks, right? Like, as I'm listening to the audiobook, it's very easy for me to imagine and visualize what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think I'm a combination of those 2.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good. And that's okay. But what happens lots of times is like what Laura said, they feel that well, if everybody else in your family is not,
yeah,
that's where we run into difficulties, because it's like What's wrong with us that we can't learn the way they do? So cool. So, to be an auditory, so that's what we just talked about. Do you listen to class lectures rather than reading from a textbook? Does reading out loud help you remember information? Do you prefer to listen to recordings, podcasts, that kind of thing? One of the things, do you create songs that help you remember? Those little lyrics, those little, what are they called? Where you put words to music to remember things. That's what happens, because if you answered yes to those, that means you probably are an auditory learner, or, as we already talked about, maybe a combination of both. Okay, so one of the things that I want to do as part of this presentation is to hit on all kinds of the different learners. So right now I want to quick play with you, and why this comes up is when we can accept who we are and how we learn, that adds to our happiness. And I'm a happiness expert. I want people to be happy. And so that's where, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a quick video. I hope I can play that quick video. So now the next type of learning is the reading and the writers. They're the ones that they primarily like to have the other text-based. Do you find, so the questions for that is, do you find reading your textbook a great way to learn new information? Do you take a lot of notes during class or while reading textbooks? Do you enjoy making lists? Do you like reading definitions? Do you like creating presentations? Do you prefer it when you have, like there's overheads and slideshows and that kind of things, and which we're going to have in a little bit too. So how many of you think that you are reader learners? Oh, Joe, okay. What do you
I am. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, but I think it's combined with visual, because when I read, I visualize in my mind something related to what I'm reading. And even extreme, because I did a lot of math and statistics, okay. I would visualize equations and distributions and link them to what I'm reading. So it's sort of a joint
exactly
reading and internal visualization more than anything.
Right. Okay, then somebody else said something.
Laura.
Laura, okay.
I'm the same type of learner. What did you call it? Reading and text?
Reading or writing. You tend to read and write.
Yeah.
So you're either reading what somebody else has written or you're writing it yourself.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, and then I make tons of lists and I take tons of notes and yeah.
Okay. For myself, I like to listen and read at the same time. So like when I am watching, like if I'm learning something and it's got text in front of it, I'll put something on my iPad and something on my phone so that I'm listening to it on my phone, but I'm reading it on my iPad, the same information. And that helps me to learn. And so that's one of the things that it is so important, because we all learn differently. Okay, the next one is the kinesthetics. They tend to learn, they're the tactile. They're the ones that they learn by touching and feeling things. And so the questions for that are, do you like manipulating things? Do you like touching things, like touching material? My youngest son was that way. He would always feel things. And I would be like, why are you touching that? But he was a child. Well, because and he would give me some kind of reason. I never understood it. It's, hard to be a parent sometimes. And one of the things is it hard for you to sit still for long periods of time? Are you good at
100%?
See,
100%. I have ants in my pants.
Right. We are parts of all of them depending on the situation. And when we can actually accept that those are all parts of us, that's when the law of attraction is going to bring more things to us that are good, because we're accepting how we are. We're not trying to be something that we're not. So that's why I just thought this was going to be such a fun thing to, to share with people how they learn. Okay. So now, so there are, but I want you to notice that there are 4 types.